working as a research fellow technology transfer at the SAARC Energy Center. I shall be moderating today's session. I'm extremely grateful to the delegates from member states and our panelists for today. Cross-border electricity trade is increasingly becoming important globally in terms of sustainable development, and particularly in the context of South Asia. I think the diversity of the available resources and the complementary demand patterns make an ideal platform for an integrated region. Up till now, the cross-border electricity trade in our region has been bilateral in nature, and we all need to work together to realize multilateral engagements and interconnections. By removing barriers to electricity trade, each member state can lower electricity costs and support the competitiveness of the respective power sectors, and also improve resilience and reliability of the power supply. I hope that this consultative workshop proves fruitful in this regard. Respected delegates, we have divided the discussion for this workshop into two sessions. The first session, we would like to hear from you and to present the perspective of your respective country and cover some of the CBT enabling policies and also the ongoing projects and some of the challenges that you may have faced, and a little bit about the investment experience for such projects. For the second session, we have also invited experts from different regional organizations to discuss the regional outlook on challenges and financing for such projects. We shall be joined by Mr. Rajiv Ratnapanda from Research Triangle Institute, India, Mr. Jeevan Sharma from Asian Development Bank, Mr. Matthew David Wittenstein from UNESCAP. Please say hello to them, and I shall also be introducing them in detail before their presentation. So with this, I would like to start the discussion on the first session, which is related to the member states. I would like to call upon the delegate from Pakistan. If you can please hear me, please start the discussion. I would like to request Mr. Ahmed Samir Heran, the Director of Plan and Policy Directorate, Afghanistan, Parishna Sharkat, and Mr. Nangyali Miakhil, who is Deputy of Planning and Engineering on DABS as well, to present the status of Afghanistan. If Mr. Samir, can you please hear me, and if you'd like to present the status of Afghanistan?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, you're audible. Please go ahead.
Great. Good to be here. Good morning to everyone. This is Samir Hairan, Director of Plan and Policy here at DABS Afghanistan. DABS is Afghanistan's only electric utility. Along with me is Mr. Nangyala Miakhil. He is Deputy Plan for Chief Commercial Officer of the Afghanistan Parishna Sharkat. We are glad to be here. We are happy to discuss what's mentioned in the agenda. As you all know, recently in the past as well, we try to act as the geography of this region call upon it. We try to initiate multiple projects to ensure that Afghanistan plays the role of energy hub for the region, connecting the central and South Asia. For the same reason, some of the main projects that we have initiated in the past, as you all are also aware of it, it's the CASA 1000 project. Then there are other projects we can call TAPI and TAP projects, which are very important projects for the region. We are going to also mention 2TAP project, which is connecting multiple Central Asian countries, which is also, of course, in the planning stage at this as we speak right now. These are some of the major projects that are connecting Central and South Asia. Of course, TAP, which is Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan project. This was initiated a few years ago, and Afghanistan and DAP especially was successful to initiate the first phase of this project. The first phase was signed earlier this year, and no, we are going to actually start the practical works on site for that. So this shows how committed we are. Beside all these, as you're also aware, we have multiple connection points with our neighboring countries. The Islamic Republic of Iran, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan, from all of which we import electricity, and this is again showing how hard we are trying to ensure the regional integration for that. All of this, especially with the Central Asian countries, we initiated to be connected to CAPS, Central Asian Power System, and that is also, we had good progress in that. Asian Development Bank was supporting this initiative. We did technical studies on that. We identified what is required to make sure that Afghanistan is connected to the Central Asian Power System, and then of course we will be further enabled to play the role of energy hub for the region. With that, inside Afghanistan, we have to make sure, of course, to transfer the power from Central Asia to South Asia, and especially Pakistan. We have, with the support of our donor agencies, especially Asian Development Bank, we have initiated multiple projects to expand the grid. With that, we will be having 500 kV transmission line coming all the way to Kabul, and of course in the later stages we will make sure that our ring grid, the ring is of 500 kV as well. This will ensure that not only the locations and the provinces inside Afghanistan which are not connected to the grid to be connected to the grid, but also enable us to export this power, the excess power to the other countries. With that, another factor that is coming in is that, of course, we will not be only working on importing power, but also generating domestic from domestic resources. We do have wind and solar potential. Our wind potential is one of the biggest in the world, as the initial data suggests. We have initiated some discussions with our neighboring country, Iran, and also some European countries who are interested to actually start this project with us. With that great potential, of course, we will be ensuring the sustainable contributing to achieving sustainable development goals, but also we will be having, the potential to also export this power to our neighboring countries in time of need. This is one of the major projects in terms of solar. In the recent 2-3 years, we made sure that private sector is involved. We have initiated not very large scale, but medium scale projects, 15 megawatt, 20 megawatt, 40 megawatts, and we have a 50 megawatt project, which is thermal. Of course, we are using our domestic natural gas resources for that. Solar projects, some other solar projects are also in development stage. We do have some which are running in the past 2-3 years. But we are committed to further, bring in private investors, for the same purpose. We eased some of the processes inside Afghanistan. We made sure that the private sector shows more interest in this area because, of course, of the potential. And beside all of that, of course, we do have some challenges. We had some challenges in the past. A major point was the security. But fortunately, recently, some of the changes, political changes that we witnessed in Afghanistan, there is some development in that area of security. But of course, the economic aspect is now under question. The investors who had ongoing projects, Asian Development Bank, and of course USAID and all others were involved in some of those projects. And now the investors are questioning how we should, proceed, because these projects. For these projects, we do have power purchase agreements, and if some of those projects are completed, then some missing components of that, which were being supported by our donor agencies, is something that we have to address. With that, I think I will stop here. I would be glad to mention how many projects we have in terms of investment, but I will let Mr. Miakhil to also highlight some of the key components that we are doing here. Thank you. Miakhil Seb, Mr. Miakhil, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Do you hear me?
We can hear you. I think there is some distortion.
Hello, colleagues. Do you hear me?
Please go ahead, Mr. Miakhil.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think most of the issue has been.
Mr. Miakhil, you're now muted. Can you please unmute yourself, Mr. Miakhil? Hello, Mr. Miakhil. Are you able to hear me? Hello, Mr. Miakhil. I think we have lost connection. Mr. Samir, if you would like to maybe conclude your end, then maybe we can move to the next member state.
Thank you. I think there is some technical problem with Mr. Miakhil's connection. So what I would like to end with is that we wanted to explain the current status of how much power we import from our neighbor countries, and it's around 70% of 70 to 75% of that. And also we do have a major 5 to 7 power purchase agreements with IPPs, independent power producers inside Afghanistan. This is going all the way from 10 megawatts to 150 megawatts. Most of the resources is solar and hydro, and we do have 2 projects which are thermal. With that, and also some of the projects which are connecting all of these together, which I hope will add us somehow in this meeting as well. As I can see that colleagues from ADB and USAID are also here. CASA 1000 project, especially, and also some of the other projects which were ensuring that we can contribute to the regional integration, the transmission line projects that were being funded and supported by ADB. I hope we can add those challenges here. And going forward, we would be glad to discuss and answer questions as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Samir, for providing the status of Afghanistan. And it's good to hear that cross-border electricity trade projects are prospering in Afghanistan. Moving on, I would like to invite the delegate from Member State Bhutan. I would request Mr. Shiring Yangki, the Executive Engineer from Department of Hydropower and Power Systems, Ministry of Economic Affairs, to please begin their presentation on Bhutan. Ms. Yangki, you can share your screen now, please, and if kindly also share your camera, I think.
Is it visible?
Yes, please go ahead. Thank you. You're audible now.
I'm keeping the camera off for the to get a good bandwidth of our internet.
Okay, no worries. Okay, please go ahead. Thank you.
The distinguished delegates, speakers from different organizations and officials of SAARC Energy Center, a very good afternoon. My colleague and I'm glad to be part of this workshop. As desired by the SAARC Energy Center, my colleague and I have prepared a presentation based on your requirement. Sorry,
We can't see your screen now. Can you please share it again? Yeah, it's okay. Can you please make it full screen?
okay, just
Yeah, thank you.
So I'll be talking on the sector of Bhutan, and then the institutional arrangement, the existing power sector policies and plans, the projects which are under construction, then the brief on the cross-border transmission links and investment mechanism or the opportunities in Bhutan. Just to give an overview of our energy sector, we have a total installed capacity of 2,342 megawatt, including small hydro and wind. Our peak demand in 2021, which was recently occurred, was 429 megawatts. Then hydropower is the main source of electricity in Bhutan, and as per the power system master plan, we have hydro potential of around 37 gigawatt. And in 2019-20, our electricity alone contributed to 24% to the national revenue and 14% to GDP. So on the institutional arrangement, the Art Department and Department of Renewable Energy looks after the policy and legislations regarding the energy sector. Then Bhutan Electricity Authority is the electricity regulator, and the Green Power Corporation mainly looks after the operation and maintenance of the hydropower plants. And regarding the transmission and distribution, Bhutan Power Corporation Limited takes care of it. And then we have Bhutan Power System Operator, which is the system operator in Bhutan. We have Sustainable Hydropower Development Policy 2021, which was actually revised this year. And it has a provision which enables promotion of cross-border trade and establishment of electricity trading company in Bhutan. Then we have Alternate Renewable Energy Policy 2013, which is mainly for the wind, solar, and other alternate renewable sources, which is also under revision. And we have Domestic Electricity Tariff Policy, which provides guiding principles, including the tariff setting parameters for the utilities and regulator. Then we have master plans for power system, and then transmission grid for national transmission grid, and also a renewable energy master plan. And these are the projects which are under construction. We have 4 major hydropower projects which are under construction, and these are mainly bilateral projects and JV project with the Government of India. And we have 2 solar projects which are underway, and 1 wind project. And the cross-border links that Bhutan share with India are at 400 kV level, 220 and 132 kV. The route length that's given on the side of the table is the total transmission route length that exists in Bhutan, including the cross-border links. And just to show in the map, we have 4 major main corridors that for which the power from Bhutan is exported to India. And on the cross-border power trade, we export almost 70% of our surplus generation to Bhutan, to India through long-term PPAs. And with Government of India's CBT guidelines and regulations in place, we can now participate in power market, their power market. So the country is also working on participating in India's power market. At the moment, we only export to India through long-term PPAs. With the commissioning of first JV project, certain percentage of power will be sold through Indian power market. And on the investment mechanism, hydropower in Bhutan is considered as a strategic national resource, and therefore the investment in hydropower so far has only been through bilateral window with Government of India. And the first JV project is under construction. And the last slide on the challenges. Hydropower development is very capital intensive, as we all know, and it requires specific skills and technology, which at present is a challenge for us. And there is also constraint in transmission corridor, which I've shown already in the map. And since our hydropower projects are all run-of-the-river schemes, is highly seasonal in nature. Although we export 70% to India, is only during the summer season. So it's a challenge during the lean dry season where our hydrology is very low. And yeah, as I've mentioned, we have limited institutional and manpower capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yankee, for your presentation. With this, I would like to call upon Mr. Raju Maharajan, who is the Chief Divisional Engineer, Ministry of Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation, to present the Nepal's perspective. Mr. Raju, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Would you like to present through slides, or would you like to talk without slides?
I have prepared presentation also, but how can I share that presentation? I am
okay. So I'll be making a presenter now, so you can just share your screen now. You should see a pop-up on your screen to show your screen. So we can see you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Can you please see on the right side of the panel? You can see the sharing tab and go there and click this show screen.
Which one?
Can you see on the right on the panel the sharing tab? Sharing, right side on your screen, on the right side, sharing.
Sharing, I'm looking
on the top, right top. Yeah, we can see your screen now. Yeah. We can see your screen now. Just please make it.
Shall I start now?
Yeah. Please go ahead. Just kindly make it full screen.
Is it okay now?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Perfect. Please go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. This is Raju Maharajan, Senior Engineer, Divisional Engineer from Ministry of Energy. My presentation is on cross-border electricity trade in Nepal. Now, outlines of my presentation is it has 5 parts. One is current energy scenario in Nepal. Second is future power generation of Nepal, and current and future plan of transmission network of Nepal. And fourth one is Nepal-India cross-border interconnection and electricity trading. And fifth one is barriers of cross-border electricity trade. In Nepal, now we have total installed capacity of hydro only 2036 megawatt, including thermal and other solar generations. We have total installed capacity is 2204 megawatt. And Nepal's current per capita consumption is 325 kilowatt hour, and access to electricity is 90%. In that grid is out of that 85% is grid and 8% is off grid. And total peak demand of Nepal at present is 1307 megawatt. And we have planned by next 3 years electricity access to all the people of Nepal. Now, in future power generation, we have total projects of capacity about 3,420 megawatt. In that, YENE is our national utility, and its subsidiary company is developing about 487 megawatt projects, and other remaining projects are developed by IPP, independent power producers. And projects expected to be commissioned by, I have presented here 5 for next coming 4 years from now onwards. That is from 2021 we will have right now our total in this physical year we are adding about 1032 megawatt of generation, and by end of this physical year we will have total capacity will be 2479 megawatt, and our peak demand, this is a forecasted demand, that will be by the end of this year, this physical year, the 1671 it will be. Similarly, in 22-23 we are planning to add projects. These are all hydro projects only. Total capacity will be 919, and our total installed capacity will be by next physical year 3,300, near about 3,400, and our peak demand will be at that time, maximum will be 1,840. Similarly, I will say now by 2025 and 26, our we are by that year, in that physical we are adding about 1,128 megawatt of power. This is all we are expecting, and our maximum generation installed capacity will be 6,164 megawatt, and by that time we will have surplus peak power will be 2,482 megawatt. Similarly, this is the transmission projects, and existing circuits in total we have about 4,000 circuit kilometer of different voltage levels, and under construction are about 2,500 kilometer, and the plan and purpose is about 4,755 kilometer of circuit. This is just for information only, and this is one our power map, transmission plan of Nepal. In that few cross-border interconnections are also shown in that figure, in India as well as in China also. Now, this is a Nepal-India cross-border interconnection and electricity trading. In this, these are 11 interconnections which are existing right now, and the capacity of these lines to trade or export or import of power is about 836 megawatt of power. And these is in last 5 years we are importing maximum in years back we have deficit of power, that's why we are importing power from India. Now by from last year we have now surplus of power in west season. In this year only we are we have about 500 megawatt of power surplus power, and we are planning to export that power to India. This is the existing mode of power import or export with India. In power exchange, Nepal-India power exchange has been taking place since long time. It was started in 1972 with the exchange of power of 5 megawatt. Now it has raised up to 150 megawatt. In the short term, other mode of electricity trading is a short-term bilateral contracts. NEA, Nepal Electricity Authority, has signed short-term agreements with BVN and PTC on an annual basis. Similarly, recently, NEA has also participated in the power exchange market of India. They have started this from since May 1st of this year, and also government of India has allowed NEA to sell 39 of megawatt power recently. From this month only it has started. In case of barriers, I must say that I have pointed out 4 barriers in here. One is a lack of trust. This is in South Asia. I think South Asia is the least integrated region in the world when we talk about the electricity market. The idea of South Asia Energy Ring was first fielded in 12 summit, 12 SAARC summit in 2004, I think. After that, the SAARC Energy Center was created in Islamabad to drive the creation of Energy Ring. But till now, development in this area is we cannot see any development, I must say. In second one is the policy barriers. Policy barriers. Just I will give just one example in this case. In guidelines on import, in the Indian guidelines on export import cross border of electricity 2018, in clause 3.1, the cross border trade of electricity across India is allowed, whereas in same guidelines in clause 6.1, government of India has reserved the right to import and export of electricity to neighboring countries for reason of large policy interest. This statement, the 6.1 statement, may be interpreted positively or negatively depending on the situation. So this kind of policy barriers is still existing. Cross-border third is cross-border interconnection is not market-oriented, means now we have only bilateral arrangements. That is also very limited power import and export. Those bilateral arrangements we can extend to regional power markets. So this is also not happening right now. And uncertainty in natural market means this is not fully open to all the participating countries, I must say. Now, conclusion from Nepal's perspective is, as I have already shown in my previous slides also, that our domestic market is very small relative to other countries' market. So we will have a surplus of power throughout the year by the end of 23-24. This shows that as we have in our power sector, more than 60% of power is generated from the private sector. So this is a high risk for the private sectors, as the NEA has signed take and pay power purchase agreement with those IPPs. So therefore, Nepal will have to find a market in coming days for this. With cross-border and regional electricity trade, Nepal can serve the clean energy in the south. That we believe in this. So this is my end of presentation, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raju. Quite informative presentation. May I now request Mr. Tosifur Rahman, who's Deputy Manager, National Transmission and Dispatch Company, NTDC in Pakistan, to present the Pakistan's perspective. Mr. Tosif, can you please unmute yourself and please share your camera as well?
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, and a very good morning to all the worthy delegates and the organizers of the SAARC Energy Center. I am Tosifur Rahman, Deputy Manager Load Forecast in the Power System Planning Department of NTDC, and I am going to present about our Pakistan power sector and the cross-border trade agreements we have at present, and the benefits of how we can all, as SAARC members, harness the benefits of cross-border trade. So, can you make me a presenter so that I can share my presentation?
Yeah, just let me do that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
Are you able to see a pop-up on your screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. Please go ahead.
So,
I can see your screen now. Please just make it full screen.
Okay. You can everyone see my screen?
Yeah.
And
it's now full screen. Thank you.
Yeah, and my cursor as well. It will act as a pointer as well.
Yeah. I can see your cursor. Thank you.
So,
thank you.
what Pakistan, as a responsible state, believe that borders are opportunities; they are not hurdles. So that is going to be the punchline of my today's presentation. That borders are opportunities; they are not hurdles. Sorry. So our today's focus on a brief introduction of NTDC system, then what are the rationale for regional energy connectivity, then what's the existing SAARC energy ring, and how actually NTDC is connected with the Central Asian states, and scheme to cope with power sector challenges. And in the end, all questions will be welcome. So here's the brief introduction of our NTDC system, of our whole power sector. We have generation, hydel generation. PAC stands for atomic energy generation, and there are certain IPPs for like coal power plants and furnace oil power plants, and then the energy is being transmitted and then distributed. There we have 10 distribution companies and 7 consumer categories, and in parallel to that we have one K electric system, which is actually Karachi Electric, which runs through the generation, transmission, distribution solely. So that's the existing system. You can see we have 500 kV network with 16 grid stations of 500 kV and 8,119 kilometers of transmission lines. And similarly, we have 245 220 kV grid stations with 11,322 kilometers of lines. And our total capacity for 500 kV is 26,460 MVA, and for 220 kV network, our total capacity is 31,060 megawatt. In the future, you see what we are going to have HVDC system in our network. 2 HVDC lines are proposed. One is the Kasa line from the Central Asian state of Afghanistan to Pakistan, and one is from our southern part to harness the coal generation. Now, why we believe that regional electrical connectivity is important? Recently we have developed our long-term generation plan, and some of the salient features of that long-term generation plan is the massive utilization of hydropower, further balancing the overall basket price with high share of indigenous coal, less reliance on imported fuel. Renewables account for the overall share of 16% of the installed capacity. That's going to increase in the future, and by 2040 a capacity of around 9,000 megawatt is meant to be retired. Actually, these targets are actually linked with the cross-border trades. That's why I have just mentioned here, and that's going to be our reshaped energy mix in 2040. And you can see 40% of hydro generation will be there, and the thermal generation, which is at present at 66%, will reduce to 40%, and the renewables will increase to 16% from the current position of 4%. So if you look at this table, you see that the hydro generation is available in summers, and in Pakistan the load is used to be the maximum in summers. So our maximum demand will be met by the hydro generation, but in winter our demand reduced. This is the, you can see from here that our demand reduced by 60% of our maximum generation. So in that case, Pakistan would have a potential to export the power to our neighboring countries, and that will further enhance the energy security, generation adequacy, and it will be an optimal utilization of available resources. And interconnections offer opportunities to Pakistan for exporting energy when surplus, particularly in winter when demand is low. You know, if I perceive like in Afghanistan, where the summers are where the winters are usually tough, so their peak might be in winters. You know, their peak demand would be in the winter. So Pakistan can export the power from to Afghanistan in the winter when we have surplus generation through our cross-border interconnections. Similarly, if the ring extends to India and to Bhutan and to like Nepal and Bangladesh, where you know the summer, the peak demand is other than summers, you know, we can export the power there as well. You see, and this is not a new concept. We have a very pertinent examples of regional interconnections. You know, all the Middle East, Gulf Generation Cooperation Council Interconnection Authority is there, which includes Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. These all countries are connected, and they are mutually cooperating with each other and harnessing the benefit of all the optimally utilizing their generation resources. So why can't we, the SAARC countries, do the same? Similarly, all European network is almost interconnected. So they can easily, and I have a chance to visit the Germany's system, where I saw that even during fault conditions, you know, where the system gets destabilized, even at that time, the neighboring countries support and the system gets stable in a very shorter period of time. Like if I say that in the northern part, we have, if we are connected with Afghanistan, suppose, and we got some you know, voltage instability somewhere in Afghanistan, somewhere in the northern part of our country, so you can get support from Afghanistan. Any generation can support that, and your fault can be, you know, removed immediately. Otherwise, the generation from south in Pakistan will have to travel all the way to north, and that will provide the stability to the system. So that's a small example, you know. Similarly, if we got the fault somewhere in our I mean eastern part, like Lahore, so it's quite near to India rather than our south, so we can get support from India, and similarly India can get support from Pakistan, you know, during faulty conditions, you know, where the system gets destabilized and some generation needs to come in and bring stability to the system, frequency and the voltage as well. So these interconnections could be very helpful, and many countries, you know, they are harnessing their benefits and optimally using their generation resources. So we all SAARC nations, you know, being a responsible nation, should focus on that. Currently, you see, there are certain rings already in the SAARC countries and some neighboring SAARC countries. You see that there is a Nepal, India, Bhutan, Bangladesh, you know, this could be a one ring. Similarly, India, Bangladesh, India, Myanmar, India, Nepal. You know, some of the connections are already available, but a ring can be developed. Similarly, in our southern part, you can see the Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan. They are planning that CASA, what will be Central Asian States network, which we have proposed, and it's underway. And similarly, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Afghanistan, Iran, Pakistan. So these could be the potential options. We all can work over on it. That and the potential capacity, India, Bhutan could be, you know, 2100 megawatt. India, Nepal could be 1000 megawatt. India, Sri Lanka could be 500 megawatt. India, Bangladesh is over 1000. India, Pakistan could be 500 megawatt, and the CASA, which is underway, CASA 1000 means that the 1000 megawatt capacity could be transmitted both ways, and 300 addition is under consideration. So what would be the benefits? As I have mentioned, utilizing optimally electric power resources, developing a strong economy with good jobs, modern infrastructure, proper social services, facilitating clean power export revenues for the certain member states, and by reducing electricity shortages, in other member states, delivering reliable, affordable electricity to parts of the world that need it in summer and winter, promoting inter-regional cooperation, investments in social services, and encourage community benefit sharing. So this is a brief overview of how we have proposed that CASA 1000 network. Some of the salient features of that project is they're supplying surplus Central Asian power in the summers to Afghanistan and Pakistan. Confirmed delivery of 4,000 gigawatt of energy or above. A World Bank study declared CASA project as viable and beneficial despite the security risk in Afghanistan. HVDC lines from Sangtuda in Tajikistan, passing through Kunduz, Kumri, Kabul, and Jalalabad in Afghanistan, and end up in Peshawar. That's the route of our CASA project. And total length of transmission line would be 750 kilometers. 16% would pass through Tajikistan, 75% through Afghanistan, and 9% through Pakistan. So Afghanistan has a very key stakeholder in our CASA project. Afghanistan, are you listening to me? No. Existing and proposed network, you see this is the,
Yes, we are.
you can see the map already. The hard red lines, you can see the network has been established, and the dotted lines is under proposal, and from Kuzdent to Dushanbe and Regar, the line is already available. That has to be connected somewhere to Sangtuda and then enter to Afghanistan at Kunduz, then Kabul, and at Peshawar. And there's almost, I have explained the scope of the project. Converter stations. This is going to be a high voltage direct current line, HVDC line. And benefits, already almost I have explained. So how we can cope up with the existing power sector challenges, not in Pakistan, but whole of the South Asian countries. We can add cheap, clean megawatts through indigenous resources and indigenous technology, make and sustain the grid. Smart interventions for the low hanging fruit, energy efficiency and energy conservation, regional interconnections to cater shortage as well as surplus. I repeat, regional interconnections to cater shortage as well as surplus. My mission on SAARC initiatives: domestic energy development and bilateral cooperation alone will not solve power crises of South Asia. Engagements have to be multilateral. If there are any questions, they're all welcome. Otherwise, this marks the end of my presentation. And with this slogan that the borders are opportunities, they are not hurdles. With that, I thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Tasif, for your presentation. I think you more or less have represented SAARC region as a whole as well. Respected delegates, at this point in time, if anyone has any comment or any question for the purpose of information sharing, please go ahead. Okay.
Can I read the question, please?
Yeah, please, Mr. Smith, please go ahead.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Tausif. It's indeed good to see that we all are pushing and are committed to work toward inter-regional integration. I just wanted to raise a question about the TAP project, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan project. What are your plans in that regards, if any? Because as you see, the Turkmenistan and Afghanistan are committed. They already initiated the first phase of that, which is 220 kV line up to Herat, Afghanistan. And do you have any plans to initiate this and resume actually works on that, and we can take it from there? Thank you.
Yes. Yes, Pakistan is very serious about CASA 1000 project. Previously we have hired ABB consultants for the designing and you may say the other necessities, to meet the other formalities relating to designing and coordinating. As I've already said, that we are pretty much serious about CASA 1000. We are looking forward to other member states like Afghanistan, Tajikistan to move forward. And in the Peshawar region, we have made certain changes where that HVDC conversation is going to be constructed. So we are really looking forward, and we believe that that's going to be a milestone in our SAARC region, because as I've already said, that in summers, Pakistan needs electricity and cheap electricity as well. So Afghanistan, Tajikistan have the big hydro potential, and that is used to be maximum in the summer. So we can get the electricity in cheap hydro and environment friendly electricity from Afghanistan in the summers. And in winters, we have at the same time we have the ample coal generation and the nuclear as well. So we can provide that energy backwards to Afghanistan and Tajikistan, which is going to help them. So it's really a very good thing, and we are looking forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tasif. I think we can now like to move. I think there is a question in the chat box. I think Mr. Kharbanda. Mr. Kharbanda, good morning. Are you able to hear me?
Very good morning, Ahmed. Thank you very much. Yeah, I am able to hear you. I just wanted to know about CASA's tariff. What is the tariff at Pakistan? Because you said that only electricity will be available for 6 months only. The surplus power from the Central Asian countries will be supplied. So the cost of transmission and wheeling charges, everything, what will be the likely tariff of that?
Okay, Mr. Zasif, if you have any information on that,
I think certain modalities have already been finalized, but this tariff thing is yet to be finalized, because there are many factors actually will affect that. So, but by when we say that this is going to be an HVDC link, so the power, so as in the HVAC, the power can transport both ways. So yeah, it is the case that in 6 months we can get power from Tajikistan, Afghanistan to Pakistan, but in the rest of the 6 months, as we are developing many other generation resources in Pakistan, we can provide the energy backward as well. So, but these tariff modalities and other cost analysis, they have, at the very basic level, they have been finalized, but they have yet to be, what I say that further finalized and notified as well. So at this position, I'm sorry, I'm not in a position to tell you what is the exact tariff which has been finalized, but I think it has not yet been finalized.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Respected delegates, moving on, I would like to invite Mr. Rajiv Ratna Panda to this platform to continue the discussion. Mr. Rajiv Ratna Panda is an energy expert, is an electrical engineer, management research, public policy and strategy professional with multi-regional energy system expertise. He is currently working for USAID, the South Asia Regional Energy Partnership for Research Triangle Institute, India. He provides technical inputs and advice, as well as policy, regulatory, legal, market inputs for enhancing cross-border electricity trade, power system integration, transmission system and grid integration, and regional power market design and development. He has been an avid reader and keen observer of energy cooperation and international relations in South Asia and ASEAN regions. Thank you, Mr. Rajiv, for joining us. Are you able to hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead. I have also made you a presenter, so if you'd like to share your screen.
Okay.
And may I also request you to kindly share your camera so we can see you
I
as well.
My camera, I think. 1 second. Can you see me?
Yes, yes. Good to see you.
Okay.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. And you can see my slides, right?
Yes, yes. Fine.
Okay.
Can you please make it full screen? I think there's not yet full screen.
Is it clear?
Yeah, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hello everyone, and good to be speaking with all of you. What I plan to do, you already heard from the country, presentations about the country's initiatives and approach to cross-border trade in South Asia. And what I plan to do is to speak as a region as a whole, South Asia as a whole, and see what we have done so far and where we have lacked so far, and what are some of the things probably that we need to work on, particularly from the point of view of promoting investments in cross-border electricity trade projects. And I will also speak in the context of the overall, the scenario, in the sense that there is a lot of focus on climate change, there is a lot of focus on decarbonization, and some of these also will lead to some sort of added emphasis and focus on the cross-border electricity trade, because as we heard from many people, that it will can also contribute significantly to the overall CO2 emission reduction in the region. So I also speak in that context and linking with the overall, the policy narrative of decarbonization that is happening globally, with a lot of net zero announcement, rapid advancements in clean energy targets. So with that background, let me go to the presentation. So I will cover these points. Very briefly, I'll talk about the USAID support to cross-border electricity trade, and just introduced the new program, SAARC program, which has been launched. Then a little bit about the South Asia CBT as a whole, and what are some of the future perspectives, and how the region is evolving in the midst of climate-induced energy transformation. A lot of countries are focusing on the energy transformation. Then spoke about the nature of the CBT project, what is its uniqueness and the risks because of that uniqueness, and what are some of the investment challenges. Then what can be done to attract investment and mitigate some of the risks, and then speak specifically on the role of market design, how we can design electricity market which can actually act as an enabler for promoting investment, and conclude with a slide and the conclusion. Very briefly, you all are aware of USAID support to cross-border energy trade. It has been there, supporting now almost over 2 decades with SAARC program initiated in the year 2000, and it has gone through many phases. And recently, the new regional program, that is South Asia Regional Energy Partnership Program, has been announced, which also is a 5-year program, and it's a larger and bigger initiative, and it will focus on fostering an integrated and self-reliant energy systems in South Asia. It has various components, and it aims to modernize the whole energy system in the region. It has basically the 4 key areas: enhancing the regional market and integration, that is one of the area. Then of course focusing on deployment of advanced energy solutions and systems, then modernizing the utilities and making them high performing modern utilities, and then focus on the transparent and base value procurement with a lot of private sector participation. And it has a lot of targets for itself, including something around 4 terawatt-hour of cross-border electricity. With that brief background, you all know about the cross-border trade in South Asia. But what I plan to show in this slide is that despite various challenges and difficulties or hurdles, we have seen that the cross-border electricity trade has increased over the years. May not be at the pace at which one would have desired, but certainly it has improved from what it used to be. Something like the CBT has almost doubled than what it used to be in the year 2012 or something like that. Of course, we all agree that potential remains large, and we heard people making reference to other regional power pools where trade has increased over the years. Despite all these factors, the trade is slowly increasing in South Asia. not just the BBIN. If one looks at the trade of Southeastern country with their neighboring countries, we could see that something around 24 billion units of trade is actually happening, including the neighboring regions of the Southeastern countries. So there is a prospect of the inter-regional integration as some of these figures shows. Looking at the future, of course, we know that currently it is more of a bilateral approach, and some trilateral initiative are being discussed, and hopefully the region will move towards the trilateral mode of power trade, and then eventually the sub-regional markets will be integrated, and probably more of a regional or a pan-regional market will be created. Of course, there are a lot of plans. If one look at the transmission interconnection, something around 43 gigawatt of transmission interconnection could possibly happen by 2036 or 2040. So there are a lot of plans and a lot of prospects for cross-border trade. Then let me speak about when we discuss the South Asia and the cross-border trade, we also discuss about primarily the clean energy, because hydro is one of the dominant form of energy. So how does the cross-border trade can actually help in climate mitigation, and how South Asia is actually in the midst of the climate-induced energy transformation that is going to take place. Now we all know that South Asia is probably very highly vulnerable to the adverse impact of climate change, and most, let's say 3 countries, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, are among the 10 most affected countries in the region. Then, of course, 5 countries, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Nepal, India, Sri Lanka, within the initial 30 rankings of the out of 180 countries. So there is a lot of adverse impact of the climate change, and that ultimately reflects in terms of the livelihood, in terms of the loss to the GDP, and so on and so forth. And we also have seen that over the years, the CO2 emissions have been rather rapidly rising in South Asia. And of course, it goes without saying that power sector is one of the dominant sector that contributes to the CO2 emissions. Something around 44% is being contributed by the power sector itself. So therefore, the way the climate is evolving, we need transformational action, not just minor changes, but transformational actions in power sector, followed by, of course, transport sector, which will be crucial for South Asia, and greening power sector and electrifying transport will be probably one of these single most important measures to address climate change. It is also very interesting to see that this is also being reflected in countries' understanding and approach to such difficult climate problems and challenges. We see most of the countries have come up with certain amount of carbon neutral or net zero targets. Of course, India's recent announcements are very, very significant and very, very bold, which aims to add 500 gigawatt of non-fossil energy by 2030, 50% of energy requirements from renewable energy by 2030. The reduced carbon emission by 1 billion tons from now till 2030. It was a very significant and very bold target that has been set. And this not only creates an opportunity for India, but it is also going to create opportunity for the whole region, because if there is a regional approach to the whole thing, maybe some of these things can be done in a much more economical and sustainable manner going forward. And of course, other countries, even smaller countries, Maldives also has being an island country and one of them were highly vulnerable to the climate change, and also announced their net zero targets. And in addition to some of these things, these new initiatives of One Sun, One World, One Grid, and then the GGI initiatives, they will also help and contribute to the overall deepening of regional grid integration, not just in South Asia, but with other regions of the globe. So there is some change is happening globally, I would say, and that will also translate to the region specifically as some of these, the initiatives starts getting implemented. Well, we know that CBG projects are very unique, and they are very unique precisely because of very simple reasons. First, they are very long-term investments. Bhutanese colleague mentioned that they are very capital intensive. So, if you make an investment decision today, it will be there for, let's say, next 15 years, 20 years. And most of these investments are also irreversible. So once you make an investment, it's not that you can reverse those investment decisions. It's very difficult. And it also deals with the multiple jurisdictions. So there is the issue of jurisdiction because of the cross-country nature of some of these investments. So some of these things does bring certain amount of uniqueness to the project, and thereby it gets reflected in the risk that comes with this project because of these three long-term, irreversible, and multiple jurisdiction, attributes. So of course, there are various risks that affects a particular investment decision in a cross-border project, and we have seen in the region also that sometimes even if the project looks quite feasible and quite doable to a certain extent, because of various other factors, the investment not necessarily get implemented or not get actually actualized in terms of actually building up the projects, and because of various issues, because of country risks, financing risk, off-taker risks, the issue related to the policy regulatory risk, dispute resolution risks, security risks, pricing risks. So some of the risks ultimately feed into the overall investment decision making in a cross-border projects, and this is primarily because of this three nature of the cross-border electricity projects, which are have its own uniqueness as compared to other long-term infrastructure projects. Now we know some of the challenges were also mentioned by other speakers in the previous session. So it's nothing new that happened in South Asia. This is also happened in many parts of the globe. Of course, there is always this issue of individual energy security versus regional energy security, and sometimes this also is a factor in terms of policy making. Jurisdiction I mentioned, jurisdiction also leads to the issue related to the harmonization, and we have different level of policy, regulatory, and market and technical commercial framework. So sometimes they also, if not technically hampers the trade, at least in terms of putting the systems and frameworks in place, sometimes takes time. Sometimes also the power market development also has its own challenges because of the certain issue of how this sector will operate, and it's opening of the sector. So this also varies from country to country. Financial, commercial, sometimes, as I mentioned, that project feasibility, even though it sometimes looks feasible, you may encounter during the implementation certain other challenges, which also makes the financing difficult. And some sort of fair and equitable sharing of cost of cross-border transmission is also a concern. And by the way, transmission is the most key element in cross-border trade, and it needs significant investments. The transition to trilateral, multilateral has its own pace. Some movement has happened, but again, we wait to see the concrete, trilateral trade. Of course, the trade through power exchange has already been started, which is a very positive development. At least, some beginning has been made, and maybe furthermore, intensification of that process also needs to take place. Okay, so what can be done to attract investments, and what can be done to mitigate some of the risk? Of course, this is a little bit old estimates of I guess around 2018 or 19, but still it talks about that the scale of the investment is fairly large. I could see that not just the hydro or renewable energy, but in general about the climate investments. It could be something around 3.4 trillion US dollars, which is huge numbers. We need, if you talk about only hydro, around 100 billion, renewable energy around 400 billion US dollars are required. So there is significant investment requirements. Of course, the recent decarbonization goals, which I just mentioned, also will require much more significant additional investment. So maybe it will be, doubled or quadrupled in terms of investment requirements. So what can be done to attract the investment? So one thing I feel that maybe it's time that the green energy CBT projects are mapped in mapped in such a way that it can become eligible for climate finance, and a lot of climate finance money can come into some of these projects, as it can be seen as one of the way to mitigate climate change. There will be, of course, while the investor will look for policy certainty or policy stability, but at the same time, we know that the whole energy transition is going to take place, and there will be some amount of, policy, let's say policy, tweaking that may need to be done to smooth that transition. So it will be important to see that how we manage the policy regulatory regimes amidst the larger energy transition that is happening in most of the countries. Of course, I feel that there is a need to, the kind of numbers we are talking about, and if we really want to realize some of these numbers, it's high time that there is some sort of dedicated investment facilities in the region, which prioritize the green integrations in the region, so that both the renewable energy and also the grid integration, cross-border grid integration can actually get smoothened, and not just for the public sector or the government, but also private sector can also get into the cross-border transmission. There is also a need to create a level playing field and also the rule of the market, so that there is a fair play that can happen between the competing parties. Of course, this is one of the challenges to balance the interests of all the stakeholders, and at the same time ensuring a adequate return on investments for the investors, which will be crucial for any investor to make any investment decisions. Also, I believe that regulatory power and capacity of regulator also need to improve. Some countries may have better regulatory power and capacities, but some countries may need to still evolve in that context, in the overall context of the rapid transformation that we are seeing in the energy system. And of course, we feel that some sort of regional institution also will play a significant role, and we are also thinking on the creating some sort of forum on energy investment, which can help out or facilitate the investment process in energy projects. So a combination of de-risking strategy or risk mitigation instruments, including various mega or other risk mitigation instruments and innovative financing instruments. One could think of regional sort of bond instruments or blend financing instruments, and and combined with regional forums can create the needed ecosystem. So when you look at the investment, it's more of an ecosystem. It's not that one single thing will make an investment decision. So there is a kind of ecosystem approach that one needs to follow to make actually investment realize or make an investor attractive enough to come and invest in some of these projects. Very briefly, I'll talk about the role of market design, because if we would be able to develop a regional power market, the whole the aspect of time-consuming negotiation, etc., will be done away with, provided that the market is opened up very well to all the participants. Now, of course, very significant developments are of course happening in India because of various factors, including renewable energy penetration and so on and so forth. As I mentioned, the trade on power exchange has already been initiated. And regional power markets can actually provide an alternative avenues for revenues. I heard Tony's colleague mention that the upcoming JV projects will have certain amount of capacity, a certain percentage of capacity will be traded on the market. And more importantly, it also ensures transparent and competitive price discovery, because all the things that we are talking about at the end, it should make sense for the consumer or the customers, and because they are also a part of the overall value chain. And if we develop certain interesting market instruments like balancing or ancillary markets, it can also actually improve the viability of the hydro projects, because it can not only just sell electricity but also provide these balancing services. And we have seen many regional around the globe has done such designs, and actually has been very successful in doing that. And the kind of renewable energy that India plans to add, maybe some of these regional component can also be thought of in the context of larger storage requirements and so on and so forth. Also, the innovative market products, so not just about the day-ahead market. India recently launched this green day-ahead market, so that the green energy can also be sold rather more specifically. Also various other term-ahead market, renewable energy certificate, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of innovation can actually happen in market design, and I believe that market design will be one of the key areas to make the entire process of decarbonization actually doable and sustainable. Because frankly, not all of the decarbonization can be done through let's say the administrative way of doing it. Market has to play a bigger role, and in this context, market design becomes important. And of course, not just the domestic market design, but also the regional market design. Of course, in the beginning, maybe the existing market platform would be utilized, as and when probably the system matures, maybe other regional dedicated regional market platforms can also be thought of, looking into the liquidity and so on and so forth. Of course, any form of evolution needs certain requirements. The policy regulatory intensification also needs to happen. Some level of reforms also need to be happen. As you can see, that as you move more towards a real time or a closer to the time, and you have different products, so that also involves certain requirements. Of course, if you do that, overall liquidity improves, and also the pricing discovery also becomes much more efficient as we go to move towards real time. So in conclusion, I would say that maybe the time to recognize green CBT projects for tapping into climate finance. Some regional investment facilities, maybe regional green integration funds could be created, which could be dedicated to finance some of these projects. So that not just anybody on private sector can also participate in some of the projects. I would say that prioritize financing of the cross-border transmission, because this is something a key area, and without adequate transmission infrastructure, trades cannot happen. So essentially prioritize. They also need to come up with a regional transmission plan and associated investment plan, so that there is an idea that okay, these are some of the investment requirements and these are some of the plans, some sort of concrete plans with some amount of feasibility, so that there is some clarity on some of these aspects for the larger investors. Of course, focus on the regional market is development, including the product development, so that it gives an opportunity for different market participants to take the benefit of that. Of course, develop risk mitigation instruments and risk insurances. Of course, there are a lot of instruments already available, MIA and others, World Bank of certain instruments. Maybe more instruments also can be developed, so that some of the risk profile can also be minimized. Of course, some of these risk instruments have its own cost. One need to see how it can be optimized. One think about the scale or the quantum of the potential of trade potential that is available. Of course, innovative financing mechanism, different bond instruments or maybe certain blend financing also can be thought of. and some mechanisms for sharing of cost and benefits. At least, if not the mechanism, at least some principles that needs to be and should develop so that it becomes a win-win and beneficial for all the participating entities. So that's all. I will close my presentation, and I'll just quote that it always seems impossible until it's done, as said by Nelson Mandela. So maybe I will close with that optimistic note. Over to you, Anand.
Thank you, Mr. Rajiv. It was a very thought-provoking presentation. Respected delegates, may I request if you have any comments on this, or you would like to pose any question to Mr. Rajiv, please go ahead. Okay. At this point in time, let me see any questions. Okay, maybe we can further move on. Just in the sense, I think, Mr. Rajiv, what I would like to, ask you, can you just briefly explain the concept of, the One Sun, One World, One Grid and Green Grids initiative? I think that will also be informative to our audience. Just briefly, if you can, summarize the concept behind it.
Right. So the whole concept of One Sun, One World, One Grid is that ideally you all know that sun never sets. So there is solar energy at a given point of time anywhere in the globe. So the whole idea is that if we build large, the cross-border interconnections, so you can actually tap into the entire solar energy. And frankly speaking, school textbook will tell you that the amount of sun energy we receive, that is more than enough. I think what we receive in a day is enough to meet the whole world demand, something like that. So the whole idea is that we build the large scale transmission interconnection, so that wherever sun is there, that energy can be utilized. So basically optimizing the time difference, you see, the difference between the time between countries, or rather between regions, let's say, not countries, because maybe in a country you don't have that much of difference, so to speak. So that's the whole basic fundamental idea. Of course, then it gets into the detail of there are 3 phases that it talks about. In the first phase, it talks about interconnecting South Asia with Southeast Asia and with Gulf countries, and then of course then goes to the African continent, and then the whole world, so to speak. So this is something that has been conceptualized, led by India. Now it is being done as a part of International Solar Alliance, one of the regional treaty-based organizations. So that's very, very briefly about the One Sun, One Grid. And of course, the GGI is also working in a similar direction, and it will provide a larger platform to discuss some of these issues. How do you solarize the whole thing? How do you bring solar energy mainstreaming, not just in India, across the globe? So that's the whole. It's a rather a grand ambition and grand vision, but certainly being implemented.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, dear respected delegates, I'm now going to invite Mr. Jeevan Sharma from Asian Development Bank. Mr. Jeevan Sharma is working in the Energy Division of South Asia Department of Asian Development Bank as Principal Energy Specialist. He currently focuses on developing and implementing energy efficiency, renewable energy, and other broader energy sector projects in India and Nepal. He is also serving as a focal person for regional cooperation and integration for energy in South Asia. He is also a key member of ADB's Energy Sector Group and Climate Change Team, and is responsible for overseeing ADB's key initiatives, including Energy for All and Low Carbon Energy Technology Transfer. Thank you, Mr. Jeevan, for joining us. If you would like to share your screen, I have made you presenter. So please begin with your presentation. You are muted. If you could unmute, please.
Yeah, so you can hear me now, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Welcome to this forum. Thank you for joining. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. So first of all, let me thank the SAARC Energy Center for inviting me to this important session. And SAARC Energy Center has always been a very good partner to share this information, generate and share information, which is very, very important on the energy sector. I had prepared my presentation, but after seeing what Rajiv has already done a very good job, so I thought that it may be better not to repeat the same information which he has already presented so eloquently. What I would like to do is just to touch upon a few important points from ADB side, and being a development bank and financial institution working very closely with all the member countries of SAARC in any way. So one thing that I would like to mention, or let's say reiterate, is that this region is very, very important for ADB for a number of reasons. One is whatever happens in South Asia will have implications to greater Asia, and then whatever happens in Asia will have impact on the whole world as well. So that's why, from that point of view, South Asia plays a very, very important role in moving towards more cleaner energy sources, energy efficiency, some kind of a reform-related activities, capacity building, and so on and so forth. And then South Asia has also been a region where we come up with various innovations and kind of new initiatives as well. So this has been a very pioneering work, and then the similar information, knowledge, and expertise can also be shared with others as well. But having said that, there's also a lot that South Asia need to learn from other countries and the region also. ADB has been fortunate for receiving the request from all of our member countries to play a more active role in promoting this cross-border power trade in South Asia. We have, I think, dated back in 2005 already. From that time onwards, we have been preparing some kind of reports and assessments in terms of looking at the technical potential, some kind of institutional arrangements, and also some kind of issues and barriers affecting that kind of a cross-border programs in South Asia. And we are continuing that one through our engagement with SAARC Secretariat, and we are also helping our SASEC countries as well through different means and so on. There are also a lot of activities that we are doing it in country where we are also looking at country-specific projects and programs, and also capacity building, which would help that particular country. But at the same time, we also wanted to explore the possibility for exporting power to neighboring countries and so on. So this power trade has never been it's not a choice, it's now kind of a necessity for all of these countries, also because of climate change, because of the variability in your demand and supply and so on. So that's why earlier we will be able to sort out these issues, the better it will be for all of these countries. But having said that, we do need to recognize the challenges that it poses in terms of identifying those projects, agreeing on the terms and conditions of that one, and then only after that the financing issue comes up. We have said that numerous times that whenever there is a request for any financing for this cross-border power trade, we will always like to raise our hand and then support these countries for such a cross-border power trade, whether it's a transmission line or anything. We do have also a strong capacity building programs for these countries to either to do the more feasibility studies or any other things required to make that project happen. Oftentimes, what I always hear is that financing is a need, and Rajiv has also shared some of these numbers in terms of how much of money that we'll be looking at and so on and so forth. This is basically billions of dollars would be required for that one. But at the same time, ADB alone will not be able to do. So we need to work with other development partners as well, and also the countries, they themselves will also be financing some of it. But what is really important is to find that particular project which is kind of investment ready. Oftentimes we don't have that one. So there are still many issues still pending between the countries. So that needs to be sorted out as soon as possible between the participating countries, and only after that will come to help finance that project as well. So I always suggest and encourage and also try to facilitate that agreement between these countries on this power trade, they're kind of a project with power trade kind of element, and then it will be much easier and much faster for us to actually finance such projects there. One thing which is very important to convey in this meeting today is that ADB will remain very engaged, remain very committed for any power trade related activities in our region, and then if any kind of a request or support needed from our side, we will always be there to support and work with other development partners in taking it forward there. I think because of this recent climate change commitments and so on, and I think Rajiv had also a very good slide and which shows that which country is targeting for this net zero and things like that, which provides kind of a good basis for us to push this agenda forward. I think we cannot get a better time than this to push this agenda forward, and again look forward to working with all of you in taking it forward. I wanted to be very brief and then convey these messages on a regular basis, and please do count us on taking this forward. And then if there's any specific questions, I'll be happy to respond to you. So back to you again. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Jeevan Sharma. Dear respected delegates, if you have any particular question, please go ahead with. Just on this, subject of climate financing, I would want to ask you, Mr. Jeevan, that ADB is increasing its climate financing ambition to $100 billion, to support climate change mitigation and adaptation projects in developing member countries. So, as also pointed out by Mr. Rajiv, do you foresee any particular opportunities within the purview of this ambition that may be helpful for South Asian countries?
So yeah, thank you so much for that question. I mean, our management, our president and our board, our management overall is very, very keen to increase our investment for this climate financing. And then you saw that, you heard that 100 billion target. So yeah, in our day-to-day work in the office, we are always asked, okay, so where are the opportunities? What can we do? How can we support our countries and so on? So there's always that question for us. So any projects which has this climate angle into it, I don't think we'll get a better opportunity than what we have right now, because from ADB side, we also need to deliver on that commitment. And then we ourselves are monitoring, and we'll also be monitored by other stakeholders that how well ADB is doing in terms of financing. So from that point of view, we will, the financing is available. Our management board, our president has already announced it, and then we just need to, identify the project and then make it ready and then do it. But I do want to emphasize that this project readiness becomes a very, very important aspect of it. Just because there is a target, we don't finance any project just like that. So that's why this project readiness in terms of what project, the feasibility study is related, clearances of a safeguard, I mean the EIA and so on, resettlement, right of way, terms and conditions, if there's any cross-border related things. I mean, whatever those readiness related activities, procurement, all those things will have to be ready before we can come in and then do that project. But at the same time, we will not wait until the project to come to us. So we are in touch with all these countries, and then we have an active engagement in the energy sector anyway. So any project, any request that comes in, we'll be very happy to take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your very detailed answer. I think I can now invite Mr. Matthew David Wittgenstein. He is the Chief of Section for Energy Connectivity at the UN Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific. I think he'll provide us the angle from the whole region perspective and from also the lessons from the other regions as well. In his role, Mr. Matthews is supporting to improve the sustainability and security of the energy systems through cross-border power system integration. His recent work includes capacity building for energy regulators in ASEAN and assessment of the potential to develop a green power corridor in Northeast Asia. He's also supporting increased cooperation on sustainable energy among the countries on the Pacific. Prior to joining the UN, Matthew was a senior electricity analyst at an international energy agency. He has also worked for US Department of Energy as well. Welcome, Mr. Matthew. Thank you for joining for today. And you may begin your presentation. I'll just make you a presenter now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Hopefully you can all see my screen.
Yeah.
Is the presentation up?
Yeah.
Great. Well, first, thank you for the invitation to participate today. It's already been a really great set of presentations. So I think hopefully some of what I'm going to say will both echo and add on to some of the remarks from both the previous two speakers, but also maybe more generally from the audience today. As mentioned, I am the Chief of Section for Energy Connectivity at UNSCAP. For those of you who don't know, UNSCAP is the Regional Commission for Asia and Pacific of the United Nations. And I'm focusing primarily on the question of how to encourage more sustainable cross-border power system integration in Asia and Pacific. Although in the Pacific, the cross-border power system integration topic is less relevant. So we're talking about how collaboration on energy issues can help support sustainable development. I'm also going to say I've been very happy to work with a lot of people who've already spoken today, and hopefully we can all continue to work together on this really important topic. First, I wanted to start by just sort of a very, very quick overview of power system activities in Asia. You know, of course, in South Asia, and these are really just maps, in South Asia, already there's been a number of initiatives mentioned. I don't need to go into them in detail. Of course, SAARC has work. There's a SAARC EI work you've already heard today. There's work going on at the country level and bilateral level. It's actually a very active region, relatively speaking. In Southeast Asia, we also have a lot of activities going on. The most notable is the ASEAN Power Grid, which has been around, at least in some form, since 1997, which aims to integrate the countries of all 10 ASEAN member states. There's also sub-regional initiatives like the ADB's Greater Mekong Sub-Region effort, which looks to integrate the power grids and create regional power trade among the 5 northern Southeast Asia countries plus southern China. There are also bilateral initiatives in this region, both among the ASEAN member states and more broadly. Of course, there are efforts to integrate South Asia and Southeast Asia, but also now we have initiatives like the ASEAN-Australia Power Link proposal, which would deliver solar power from northwestern Australia to Singapore and Indonesia. If built, that would be by far the longest underwater cable ever developed for transmitting power. In Central Asia, we've heard a little bit already through CASA 1000. There's a lot of work going on in Central Asia too. This is an interesting area in that it used to be much more integrated than it is today. Many of the power systems that are still being relied on in this region were developed in the context of the Soviet Union, and since then have fragmented and suffered underinvestment. I think there's a tremendous opportunity in Central Asia for more integration, but there's a lot of work to be done. I would only note that ADB and USAID also very active in that part of Asia. And then Northeast Asia, where there's, frankly, of the 4 regions, perhaps the least in terms of actual physical integration, but also a lot of potential opportunity. You have ADB, again, leading with their NAPSI program, which focuses primarily on Mongolia and the potential to export solar and wind resources from that country to its neighbors. We also at SCAP organize an annual forum called the NIRPIC Forum, which tries to enable more collaboration on power system integration issues in that region of Asia. And just to note that that will actually be held this year on the 2nd and 3rd of December in a virtual format, co-hosted with Renewable Energy Institute Japan. If there is interest in participating in that meeting, please let me know. Very happy to send you an invitation. It is really open to anyone who might be interested in this topic. That said, one commonality across all 4 of the subregions that I have just mentioned is that while there are many initiatives, progress has mainly been limited to bilateral interconnections. And compared to other parts of the world, there are, for example, no regional power pools. There's no regional power market more loosely defined. We're hoping to see more of that, but unlike Africa, Europe, and North America, we don't see the multilateral power trading and multilateral regional power system planning that we do see in other parts of the world. So what is the opportunity? This has been highlighted already by a number of speakers, but maybe I can frame it slightly differently. First, there's economic opportunities. So cross-border power system connectivity enables access to lower cost resources. It also enables the potential for export revenues. We saw that already in the presentation from Bhutan and Nepal. There's also potential for increased economies of scale for investment. So small countries or countries with limited domestic demand can build larger generators than they otherwise would be able to justify with domestic demand alone. This is really important for countries that want to take advantage of the potential for export revenues, but it also helps lower costs for generation that otherwise might be quite expensive. So it can lower the cost of investment on a per kilowatt basis for solar farms and wind farms, for example, or hydro plants, large upfront investments, that type of thing. There are security reasons for why we want to encourage more power system connectivity. Lower reserve margin requirements. So each country on their own doesn't need to have as much generation on backup as it would if it was isolated, because it can take advantage of and also contribute to the security needs of neighboring countries. It also increases resource diversity. We heard a lot about hydro and the seasonality of hydroelectric power. Right now, many parts of the world are facing droughts, and being able to tap into thermal resources or other renewable resources across their borders can help to offset some of the limited hydroelectric resources or some of the more variable seasonal resources, or just in general, the possibility of some kind of an outage occurring that has a systemic impact on only a segment of your power system. You know, for example, in Texas, so much of that outage earlier this year was a result of lack of access to natural gas because of freezing of the natural gas grid. More diversity of resources could potentially have helped avoid that unfortunate situation. But of course, also more specifically, we're talking more often about the potential for sustainability benefits of regional integration. And again, these have already been highlighted, but let me just emphasize a couple. One is you get better access to regions with higher renewable energy potential. If you look across Asia, the allocation of renewable energy resources simply is not equal. Some countries have higher wind potential, some countries have higher solar potential, and often there's a variation between those two. So first, you can get access to areas where the renewable energy potential is high, but also it enables the integration of variable renewables by what we call resource smoothing, taking advantage of natural variations in weather patterns, solar patterns, as we heard with the One Sun, One World, One Grid initiative, to better take advantage of resource volatility or variability and smooth out on average how much generation you get from renewables, and thereby increase integration and make it easier to do so in the context of systems that currently don't have much flexibility. I should say that these are opportunities and these benefits are widely recognized in the European Union, for example. They have already set explicit interconnection targets of 15% of cross-border capacity by 2030. And they also have grants for projects of common interest, which are projects that are found to have some positive cross-border benefit, something that an individual country would not necessarily invest in on their own because they can't capture all those benefits. These grants allow them to recoup some of those upfront costs and make it more likely these get built. In the United States, there are many things I could point to, but one that was just released is the National Renewable Energy Laboratory's Interconnection SEAM study, which among many other findings found that under a wide range of different scenarios, the benefits of more transmission in the United States and North America more generally invariably outweigh the costs, sometimes by a benefit to cost ratio of 1.2, and other times by as high a ratio as 2.5. In other words, according to the study, there's really no reason not to build more transmission under any circumstance, but the actual benefits increase if the share of renewable energy increases. So these benefits are only increasing, not decreasing. And then in Africa, we also have multiple regional power pools, many of which have been around for a year, some of which are just starting now, but are already off to a great start. And across the continent, they're now developing a continental power system master plan with the partnership of the International Renewable Energy Agency and the IAEA, which have great modeling tools. And that plan will try to take these regional power pools and turn them into a more continental resource so that everyone can benefit from their local resources. But what are some of the challenges? Many of these have been highlighted, so I can go through these somewhat quickly. Political will is critical, and it's one of the few areas, I think, in power system development we can talk about political will at an international level. When it comes to cross-border power system connectivity, more than one country has to agree that it makes sense. In Asia, in general, we do see a number of champion countries, and I think many of those champion countries are in South Asia, which is a really great news for this particular region. Other parts of Asia don't have the same level of consistent support. Northeast Asia, as I mentioned, has some countries which are very actively engaged in connectivity, and other countries which simply are not interested. Financing is a critical one. I mentioned already, in Europe, the challenge of capturing those benefits. Even just estimating the benefits and allocating the costs across borders can be quite challenging. Often in a European context, costs are allocated on a 50-50 basis regardless of the benefits, just because it's politically more palatable to do so. That might not necessarily work in a context where you don't have grants like PCIs, or you don't have a European Union structure to act as sort of a regulator of last resort. So for South Asia and other parts of Asia, we may need to think of more robust ways of measuring those benefits and allocating those costs. There's also, of course, the challenge of high capital costs. These are very expensive investments, especially for high voltage transmission lines. Not all utilities in South Asia, or more generally in Asia, have the ability to access low cost capital. The more we can do to lower the capital cost, the better. We also, as we've already stated, need to find ways of involving more private capital in these investments, because the investment challenge is simply too great. Institutional arrangements. Well, there are already good institutional frameworks in South Asia. Other parts of Asia also have frameworks in place. But as a general rule, these institutions have limited capacity, technically, human resource-wise and otherwise, and also limited authorities. In the European Union and North America, many of these institutions have the actual ability to step in and make a rule that applies across borders. That isn't necessarily going to be the case in South Asia anytime soon, if ever. Nevertheless, it means that we do need to think about what happens in place of that. If we don't have an institution that can sort of act as the regulator of final resort for the region, or as the system planner of final resort for the region, what are we going to do instead to overcome that particular issue? In other parts of the region, I should say, there are just simply an absence of these institutions. In Northeast Asia, we really lack them completely. And the last one I'll mention is alignment with sustainability. This is a general challenge, not only for Asia, but in the world. While we talk more and more about the benefits of regional integration, I think what we lack is a real clear way for countries to measure those benefits from a sustainability perspective. This is something that we're going to be working on at SCAP over the coming months and years. Definitely one that we want support and assistance on. So hopefully we can involve you in that work. But one example might be, for example, the imposition of a carbon border adjustment mechanism in Europe, where they will apply a carbon tax imported, in this case, power, but also other goods and commodities based on the carbon pricing regime or lack thereof in importing countries. That's the kind of thing we could talk about in the South Asian context as well. Perhaps we're not there yet, but it's one type of mechanism that could help align connectivity with sustainability. And just in general, some of the challenges we see specifically have already been highlighted in South Asia. Moving from bilateral to multilateral power trading, really challenging but critical. If we don't if we don't move to multilateral trading, excuse me for the interruption there, we will not be able to take full advantage of especially variable and flexible resources and optimize systems resources at a regional level. There's also a need for increased technical, policy, and regulatory harmonization. Capacity building needs have already been mentioned across a range of stakeholders. And then, of course, there's a disconnect between the ambitious clean energy goals, renewable energy, net zero targets, and the role for connectivity. Again, this is generally speaking, not just for South Asia. What we see are lots of countries talking about net zero targets, 2050, 2060, 2070. These are really exciting. What we don't see is any effort made to say, how can I leverage the renewable energy resources of my neighbors to meet these goals? And how can we collaborate to ensure that we're all moving towards these goals in a way that is holistic, harmonized, and efficient and effective for everybody? Excuse me 1 second. Okay. Now, what is UNESCAP doing on this? Well, one thing I wanted to highlight right up front is our regional roadmap on power system connectivity in Asia. Some of the people in this room are probably involved in the development of this roadmap. I'm happy to say that it was endorsed by our member states earlier this year, and we are now working with them to implement it. And this is, I think, the strongest document ESCAP has ever received to really sort of guide our work on energy connectivity, and in particular power system connectivity. It covers 9 strategies, or includes 9 strategies and various related milestones. But broadly speaking, you can categorize those strategies into 4 different groupings: strategies on planning, strategies on financing and development of cross-border infrastructure, strategies on operating cross-border infrastructure, and some cross-cutting ones, like, for example, political trust issues and coherence with the Sustainable Development Goals and capacity building, all mentioned, but also the need to develop more intergovernmental agreements. That was mentioned before as well, but it's critical. This has to start and often maybe even be fully enabled throughout the process by government and political participation, including clear agreements that set out the framework and boundaries under which these connectivity initiatives will be developed. Now, I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into 3 of those issues. First, I'll start with regional power system planning. And here I wanted to highlight an initiative of Southeast Asia, the ASEAN Interconnection Master Plan Study, the 3rd one of which has been released, or not released, but it's been approved by member states earlier this year, in fact, just back in September. This is the 3rd iteration, but I want to highlight that the first one was done around 2000, 2002, and the second one done in 2010. So this is a fairly long gap between these processes. In Europe, for example, this is done on a biannual basis. Every 2 years, they will release a new regional plan based on the national plans of European member states. That's the methodology being applied here. So we have all 10 ASEAN member states putting forward their plans for power system development, and then an effort made to optimize that planning across all 10 countries to really show the benefits of increased integration. There are a couple of reasons why this, I think, has been successful. One is there's a designated responsible entity which has the technical capacity, or at least understanding, to develop this. In this case, it's the heads of the ASEAN Power Utilities and Authorities, or HAPAWA, with strong support from the ASEAN Center for Energy. I also want to highlight they also had strong support from USAID, who funded the 3rd iteration of AIMS, and so that would, I think, not have happened without their involvement. This effort really looks to optimize interconnectors at the sub-regional level, so it moves beyond just the bilateral benefits and asks the question, what if we really looked at the potential for multilateral power trading to be part of this process? How can we optimize our resources across multiple countries simultaneously? It also included a renewable energy scenario for the first time, one that went beyond just the existing 23% renewable energy target, and looked at the potential for multilateral power trading and increased interconnection to enable higher shares of variable renewable energy. And I think that's really important, because that's the benefit we're really trying to highlight here, how interconnection can really enable more renewables and therefore more sustainable development. This is an effort, I think, that maybe is worth exploring for how it could be done in a South Asian context as well. Financing, this has come up a few times. We have been looking at this a little bit more and have been talking more about how we can accelerate investments in different types of cross-border resources, in particular power system interconnectors. We talk about third-party financing. This is already being utilized in South Asia, for example, within India or across the border between Bhutan and India, so no need to go into details there. Joint ventures, that was mentioned earlier, at least within the context of Bhutan. In other parts of the world, we see joint ventures actively being the primary way of developing cross-border interconnectors. In Southern Africa, for example, the utilities of those countries have created a joint venture called Motraco, which owns and operates all of the cross-border transmission lines. And that allows them both to leverage the capabilities and capacity of all of the countries involved, but also to sort of mitigate some of the responsibilities and ensure that there's a fair and equitable approach. So it's not driven by just one country, it's driven at a sub-regional level, in this case, Southern Africa, and therefore ensures that everyone can benefit. It also provides funders and outside entities a single partner to work with to actually build and develop these lines. There are public-private partnerships where you have both private sector and public sector entities involved in Central America. This is how they built the 230 kilovolt backbone line and market called SAARC. This is owned by an entity called EPR, but the entity has both private and public investors. And then there are opportunities for merchant lines. I mentioned the Australia-ASEAN Power Link. The critical piece there is the only way for these projects to work is if you have market frameworks in place and the ability to provide price signals to private investors. So that was something that was mentioned in the previous discussions as well, presentations as well. By creating markets and providing price signals, you open up the possibility that the governments themselves don't even have to do the physical work of building and investing in these lines. Instead, they can just create the opportunity and allow the private sector to play its role. I also wanted to highlight, though, that there is increasing support specifically aimed at financing connectivity efforts in Asia. So the Asian Infrastructure and Investment Bank, for example, has set a target for itself of cross-border connectivity initiatives or financing, making up 25 to 30% of financing approvals by 2030. That's quite significant. ADB, in their new energy strategy, explicitly calls out cross-border access to cleaner energy sources as one of its strategic goals. And there's also a new institution called the MCDF, which is the Multilateral Clean Energy Development Fund, I think. Forgive me for getting the name if I'm getting it wrong. But this is a new initiative with about $100 million of funding behind it at the moment, being hosted by the AIIB, that is explicitly looking to support cross-border connectivity projects in order to foster high-quality infrastructure and connectivity investments, specifically in developing economies. This is really interesting because it's, I think, a rare example of an institution that is only focusing on connectivity and is bringing real money to bear for capacity building and also for supporting feasibility studies and even project development. So if there's an interest, I would very much suggest looking at their website, which frankly is still under development, but also reaching out to them about what you are trying to do and seeing how they might be able to help. Finally, multilateral power trading, this has been mentioned a few times. It really is critical. And I wanted to highlight a taxonomy of multilateral regional markets that the International Energy Agency developed in a study focused on ASEAN. There are different ways of approaching this, but really these sort of are steps or different maybe modalities that maybe these are a bit looser than the steps that were highlighted in the presentation earlier. One way to start to develop multilateral trading is through a harmonized bilateral approach, where all the trading is still done on a bilateral basis, but you have a common framework and approach, maybe through harmonized power purchase agreement templates, and for example, by agreed upon wheeling agreements, so that you know when you trade power through a third country, how that power will be priced. Moving beyond that, though, is critical, and there the IEA highlights something called a secondary market, which is essentially where multilateral power trading exists as a secondary or additional option to national market structures. This is essentially the market for markets approach. This is done by the Southern African Power Pool or SAARC in Central America. In this case, what's essentially happening is countries are trading mainly their excesses and gaps. So first you figure out what you can supply nationally, and then you say, if I have some extra power, I'll put it up for trade across my border. Or you say, I need some extra power, can anyone please supply it? This is an important step away from the bilateral trading in a real way to both ensure that you can optimize your resources more efficiently regionally without sacrificing any concerns over national autonomy or sovereignty. But that said, if you really want to do this fully, effectively, and efficiently, the primary model is probably the ultimate way to go. Not every country will, but it's nevertheless one of the reasons why Europe has very much focused on market harmonization and integration across all of its countries. Here, trading is multilateral and regional by default. So we don't have a national market per se. We might have some national optimization going, especially at the dispatch level, but the market framework is one that's open to anyone who I'm interconnected with, so, and vice versa. I also wanted to highlight, so I can just say this briefly because we already had a presentation on this, but SAARC EI has been really doing a lot of great work on this. This is one example, I think, where South Asia is leading the way in Asia. And so just kudos to this region, and really, I think it's great to continue this work and really hopefully set up a regional market in the near future. Finally, I wanted to just highlight some of the ways ESCAP is supporting connectivity initiatives. There are, broadly speaking, three main ways. One is through capacity building. We're doing trainings for regulators. It was mentioned in the introduction that I've done some trainings for Southeast Asia. We're also going to be doing a training for regulators in South Asia. This has been a bit delayed for some logistical reasons, but we're finally going to kick it off. Given that it's almost the end of the year, we might delay it to the beginning of next year. But the idea really is to straightforwardly build off of the existing activities of regulators and try to support efforts to bring regulators into this conversation. It's really critical that they be part of the connectivity discussion. We're also doing a capacity building exercise in Northeast Asia, focused specifically on the question of how to develop cross-border interconnectors. There we might actually want to leverage some of the expertise in South Asia because you have much more experience here than they do in that region. We do analytical work too, of course. The only one I want to highlight here is our Green Power Corridor Roadmap for Northeast Asia, which is currently under development. That I wanted to highlight because the Green Power Corridor piece, this is a relatively new effort. We're really trying to address that question of what does sustainable connectivity look like? And so there are many other initiatives by other organizations that approach this similarly. IRENA has their clean energy corridors work. Within India, you have green energy corridors. Our approach is really about leveraging the potential for sustainable development and balancing that with national sovereignty and priorities. So given different national priorities and interests, how do we nevertheless allow all countries to benefit from connectivity? Northeast Asia is a test case for this idea, but we're hopefully going to be doing more of that in the coming months, years ahead. And finally, we do a lot of work to convene stakeholders. And this is actually, I think, one of our main areas of work because we are a small institution. We're not funding projects, we're not on the ground, but we can bring everyone together. And so, for example, we have our expert working group on energy connectivity. I think people in this room have participated before. You may already be aware we're holding a meeting in 2 weeks to discuss a paper we're producing next year, as well as some other efforts. That's been really helpful for informing our work and bringing stakeholders together. But we also now, it was discussed earlier, the GGI OSAWAG, the Green Grids Initiative, One Sun, One World, One Grid. We are involved in that effort along with other people on this call. And so we are leading, ESCAP is leading the Asia Pacific Working Group, which I think is going to really focus on convening the institutions and stakeholders who are actively trying to promote and build these cross-border power lines and markets. And the great thing about the GGI OSAWAG is, one, it's explicitly focused on sustainable development. So we already have that baked into the mandate. There are other working groups that we can leverage. There's an Africa working group, which will dig into a lot of the work going on there. There's a financing working group. Financing has come up a number of times. That's a great way of leveraging expertise of other institutions. And then, of course, there's the Global Initiative, which includes International Solar Alliance, includes UK government representatives. France is on board, US is on board, many other countries are on board. It's a really exciting moment, I think, to talk about how we can all work together to enhance connectivity and align it with sustainability and really accelerate connectivity initiatives in Asia, but also across the world. So I will leave it there. Thank you all for your attention, and I'm very happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew. It was indeed a very detailed presentation, and you covered the aspect from regional perspective as well. Just one question that I would like to ask you. You presented numerous challenges like financial constraints, we have political will, there is also the lack of institution there. So in your opinion, what do you think is the, maybe the most important challenge, you could say, in dealing with this issue in the long term? So what's your take on that?
I would say it's a combination of the political will and the institutional arrangements. I think as I mentioned, in South Asia, I do think you see a lot of political will, and it's growing, but it's necessary for it to be sustained and to be really equally felt across all the countries that are looking to do this. And to the extent that countries can feel like they're being brought along on an equal basis with all the countries in the region, that will really help. But the institutional arrangements are really critical. Obviously, I think SAARC Energy Center has a really strong role to play, but there also needs to be, as I mentioned, more collaboration among the regulators. So I think there's a SAFIR, there's a regulator initiative, but there more could be done to build that up. There needs to be more explicit collaboration among the utilities along the lines of what we see in Southeast Asia. And I mentioned, and it was mentioned in one of the presentations, the idea of creating a financing institution. I think this is a great idea, because that's also what's been missing, for example, in Southeast Asia. You have lots of great collaboration, but then these projects never really get built because the financing always tends to fall through or be hard to justify. So the more we can build up institutional frameworks in South Asia, the more we can build up political support for these projects, the more likely they are to be successful.
Thank you. Respected delegates, if you have any question, please go ahead. I would also like to, at this point, bring in Mr. Vijay Kharbanda into the discussion. He has experience of more than 40 years for working in energy and power sectors, and has worked for reputed organizations in India and also for the SAARC as well. So thank you for joining, sir. Your comments and your feedback on the discussion so far, and if you'd like to add something to it, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, William, for I think, very well comments you have made and you have presented also. I think the topic today was basically mitigating challenges and investment opportunities. So this is a proven fact, even in South Asia, or whether it is in global also, that cross-border electricity trade is a win-win situation for all the countries. If you look at today in South Asia, Bangladesh has been benefited. They have been able to reduce their energy charges. They have been able to reduce their power cuts. Similarly, the Bhutan has been able to earn a lot of revenues through sale of surplus power to India. And Nepal has also been able to reduce their power cuts, and they are able to meet the power needs for the construction power also. So even India has also been benefited, if you ask me, because they have been able to optimize their assets also and earning revenues also. So it's a win-win situation for all the countries. Now, from the investor's point of view, what are the investor looks into the challenge? What is the investor's point of view? He always looks into that my investment is safe, it is secure, and it gives a reasonable return on that. That is what important for the investors there only. But then it is immediately question comes that what are the risks for investors to put a infrastructure power project, particularly for power projects. I feel it's large projects only, large risks are there. So but in my point of view, I am going to touch on 2 or 3 things only. Political risks and everything, policy risks, everybody has already shared on that only. See, project development and market, I think these 2 are very, very important besides political and political is only. Policies plays an important role. I can give you example of India, that in India in 1947, when it was separated, it was having only 1342 megawatt, 1342 megawatt. And in 1991, we liberalized the policies at that time. At that time, we wanted to have some private developers to come. By that time, we have got a monopolies. It was have a vertical boards, and we have got a capacity of hardly 68,000 megawatt. Huge power cuts were there. I remember in those days also. In 2003, first time India brought the Electricity Act. They and this Electricity Act have really made a complete, I think, turn about the power sector in India. Today, our capacity is 388 gigawatt. So we have added in just another 10-15 years more than double, more than three times capacity. In 2003, when the Electricity Act was passed, it was 100 megawatt, 100 gigawatt only. Today it is 400 gigawatt about to this only. So we have added a huge capacity in between that. Why? Because we have created the policies structure. We have bring the lot of given incentives to private developers also. Then even we have brought the concept of ultra mega power projects, because at that time land acquisition was a concern. Even today it is also a concern. Government, even all the solar power projects which are being developed are the thermal also. Somewhere it is a competitive bidding, tariff bidding route only. Government is acquiring the land, government is obtaining the clearances, and then they are inviting for the bidding process only to ask the bidders to quote on the tariff only. So my point is that only that you need to create a policies and you need to create a market. Today we have got a long-term trade, short-term trade, medium-term trade, power exchange trade, e-bidding trade. So many platforms are there. It is transparent also, and we have created a structure where purchaser and buyer both can bid together also, and they can go for this only. But one of the important issues which I am going to touch with, particularly South Asia, is the hydropower. I think we know very well that South Asia has got a huge hydropower. You look at Bhutan, they have got about 30 gigawatt. Nepal, it is 3 gigawatt. India, 150 gigawatt. I think Pakistan has also a huge hydropower potential. But how much we have produced it? In India, out of 150 gigawatt, we have hardly produced 12% only. Nepal, even hardly 2,000 out of 83 gigawatt. So in my point of view, that hydro has been we are not able to exploit it because of certain reasons, definitely. Because of large risks are there only, large investment is there also, and tariff is not that viable. So that is one area, and we have been talking about net zero and everything this only, and countries are committing also. But somewhere I think if we have to go for net zero, then we need to develop hydropower potential. That is very, very important, and that is one of the most important renewable energy source which is lagging that only. But private investor is a challenge for him because it's a large gestation period. It takes 10 years minimum for building a hydropower project. It takes a lot of time, and investor is always interested to build a project which is short term only, as so that he can get his return as early as possible. And so that is what I just wanted to highlight, this one issue only. And otherwise, I think for cross border, everybody has highlighted it, that we need to have a regional framework, creating a regional institutional framework, regional regulatory forum associations, regional transmission associations, and dispute resolution mechanism. I think these are all important things which I think we have to do it. That is what just I wanted to share it only.
Okay, thank you. May I request Mr. Rajiv and Mr. Matthew as well to join the discussion? I think Vijay highlighted a very important point there regarding the hydropower development. So further, I have one question from one of my fellows here at SAARC Energy Center. Mr. Tularam Paudel would like to ask one question to our expert. Mr. Tula, please go ahead.
Not audible.
So I'm audible?
Yeah, please go right now. I think you're not audible now.
So
Yeah.
I was also invited here to there are no expert from Nepal, then I will deliver support maybe my colleague and senior from Nepal really mention about the power standards and some orders and challenges on that. So I think notice one point on his delivery and presentation, maybe regarding the policy, recent development policy between India and Nepal for the trading of electricity. So maybe there is no delegate from I think India this time. So Mr. Raj, you may address my question. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but the voice is not clear.
Yeah, let me just get back at it. Please.
Yeah. Now I'm audible.
That seems better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I was not clear from the beginning.
No.
Hello.
Can you please ask it again?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you everybody this for the good presentation and the delegate from member states and the representative from the multilateral organization. So I was here from the very beginning. Also, I'm scheduled here to speak from on behalf of Nepali. There was no delegate, but fortunately, Raju Maharjan, my senior, and my colleague was there, and he presented very well. In his presentation, I could notice that there is some order in policy regarding cross-border with India. And India has drafted a very conducive policy in the recent time, that is the cross-border directive in 2018, and after that SAARC drafted regulation on March 2019, and the CEA has enacted the procedure. And in that point, and it is said that like critics from the power developers from Nepal, they say that the policy, however, the milestone has been achieved, but that is not very conducive or supportive for Nepal to export the power. So I think there is no delegate from India. So maybe Rajiv maybe address this, my point. So still, India has the policy that only those projects where the India has invested, they will be buying the part from that project only. So is it good or the conducive for the promotion of cross-border? Or what do you say, Mr. Rajiv?
Right. So, the that you are referring, the clause doesn't ban as such. The clause says that the information related to that particular investment of the project should be shared. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two, we also need to see the whole thing in the, I always use this term, idealism versus realism. We need to, navigate this path. I remember when I started working in, this cross-border area in the year 2012, and that time I used to talk about there is a need to have a regulation, and often I used to get criticized that why we should have a union regulation, because we can do anything with just between. I mean, you don't need to have a regulation and so on and so forth. From that point of that stage, we have now moved to a stage where at least we have some documents, some guidelines or regulation in place. I can tell you, even Matthew can correct me if I am wrong, I don't think there is any such regulation that is available in the entire Asian region as such, which specifically talks about that. Very clearly elaborating, these are the steps, this is how you need to apply, and so on and so forth. So what I would try to say that we must look these things as an evolutionary context, that this thing evolves over the years. I remember when the first India's guideline came, and there were a lot of concerns related to investment, and then we saw that those guidelines got amended, actually got repealed, by the way. and the new guideline came into existence. So I would say that we should strive to improve the overall environment, and it will take time. And we are not unique in the world. If you look at any power pool in the world, it is not that at the at the stroke at the midnight things got opened up. It never happened. I can bet that. Can you give me an example? This happens. It also did not never happen in Europe also. If you really study and analyze how over the year it's evolved. But one thing I would like to say that which I try to give a flavor in my presentation, that with the kind of climate actions that we are talking about, with one sun, one world grid, and larger initiative that's coming into picture, I think we could not find a better time to actually talk about this. I have felt this sector last 8, 9 years, 10 years. I have seen what was the discussion at the year 2012 and what is the discussion today. And if I compare it, it is a remarkable change in terms of narrative and discussion. Today we are talking about all of these things. I remember in 2012, nobody would even talk about all of these things. All of these things. Forget about having policy statement or regulatory thing. So I would say, to answer to your question, it is an evolutionary step. I am sure as the trade increases, for example, the export from Nepal was not happening for some time, but eventually that approval also came. Of course, this is a small beginning now. I think some 30 to 70 megawatt is being sold in Indian power market. Through IEX. So that's also a beginning. So we strive for it, we struggle for it, and eventually we saw it. So we need to, I'm being optimistic in this area. I have seen the things never happen for quite some time, and then things happen. This power exchange, we spoke about having trading power exchange for a long time back, and it took let's say 5-6 years. Today, at least we are having trading power exchange. Maybe a small quantity, just a beginning has been made, so to speak. But if you see in terms of policy changes, this is a huge policy change. You can read literature who talks about trade only in surplus condition, absolute surplus condition. This is the kind of language often you find in probably mostly in developing world, so to speak. So I would say, we should strive for it, and ask for more opening of the sector, and this will slowly, gradually happen. And at the same time, I would also say that it is not also only asking India to open up this sector. It's also that some of the market reform also need to be initiated in other countries. There is no logic in saying that I will have a single buyer model and then I will continue to have market optimization. It won't happen. The kind of benefit that you can draw with the competition, that also needs to happen. So this conversation also need to happen in a larger context, that if you need that market transition, if we need that market development, these are some of the, I mentioned that, your intensity of policy, regulatory, technical harmonization actually increases as you, increase your market transition. So, I will answer that question in the overall context, that it is an evolutionary step, and, we can, strive for it, and slowly things will improve, and things will open up for the better future.
Thank you for your very detailed answer. May I now request Mr. Asadullah Zaman, he's from Central Power Purchasing Agency from Pakistan. Mr. Asad, please go ahead with your question.
Yes, this is Asad from Pakistan. First of all, I would like to thank SAARC Energy Center for giving us an opportunity to discuss this very important topic. And the speaker's guidance was very much helpful. I have a query in this regards. In Pakistan, we have a single buyer model. Yes, we are in middle of transition towards a market-based economy, but for majority of market, it will take time. We have some bilateral contracts with countries like Iran and Afghanistan for future and existing contracts. There are some additional risks associated with these bilateral contracts in terms of financing, in terms of market, and these risks have some cost. Well, if I look at the European markets, they have power pools and power exchanges, and these power pools and power exchanges are promoting the potential for cross-border electricity trade. So how can countries like Pakistan, where there is single buyer model implemented, mitigate the risks associated with this cross-border electricity trade? Well, I would like Rajiv Panda to answer this question.
Okay, so your question is basically the difference between the pool model and the exchange model, and probably you are asking the question that with single buyer model, how can I do the trade? Well, you can do the trade. I mean, even as a single buyer, you can also trade on the exchange. But the point is that the kind of optimization that you could get with a competitive, say for example, currently the trade is happening on the Indian power market. Now, Indian power market actually work because of the competition. Without competition in India, the market that we talk about India would not have come into existence, right? So let's say if India followed only the single buyer model, well, there won't be any market. I mean, the competitive market. Of course, you can have certain amount of trade and so on and so forth. So that's the first point, that even in the exchange model, I mean, it's not the best one to, best way to do it. So you can do that. Pool model needs certain level of institutional arrangements. For example, I think Matthew mentioned about SAARC and others. You need that institutional setup, right? You need that regional institutional setup. Then only probably you can do that pool structure. Now, currently in South Asia, probably it's not very much likely that we discuss about the institution, and Matthew eloquently spoke about the need to have institution, not just only at the regulatory level, but at the various level and so on and so forth. So that institutional mechanism is very much required if you go for a kind of a strong pool structure, because you need to have some form of institutionalized arrangement to do that. Europe, of course, because they had built exchanges over the years and they took the advantage of the exchanges for the cross-border transaction. So predominantly they are going through the exchanges more only. So I mean, frankly speaking, I don't see this versus that, but pool needs certain requirements and exchange needs certain requirements. So those requirements need to be put in place before you embark on any such market integration, integration initiatives. Thank you.
Mr. Matthew, if you would like to add anything to it, please go ahead.
No, I mean, I think Rajiv handled the question really well. I agree with all those points. I think the main point is there isn't really a fundamental obstacle, but the path forward really does depend on the institutional arrangements in place and to the extent it's relevant, the tolerance for risk of each country involved. When you're talking about small amounts of power traded, the risk I think is relatively limited. And that's also one of the reasons why you have these sort of secondary arrangements in Southern Africa or Central America. It's about enabling a new option. It's not about replacing existing options. And so by focusing on that, and also to a point that Rajiv made in his remarks before, it is an evolutionary process. In other aspects of the energy transition, we talk about leapfrogging, the idea that you can sort of learn from the mistakes of other parts of the world and jump right past them. But the practical fact is, if you look at how regional markets work in other parts of the world, how they have evolved over time depends an awful lot on the relative market structures and political structures and legal structures of the regions in question. They all vary. There's no sort of universal model for a regional market. And so the model that works for South Asia will be a South Asian model that will need to be developed by South Asian stakeholders. And that means this evolutionary approach. It means being willing to try things, make some mistakes even, learn from those mistakes, and continue to move forward. I mean, even in Europe, this process has started decades ago. And if you talk to them, they'll point to you to many mistakes they made over the years. But the important thing is these mistakes didn't slow progress. They actually pushed progress forward by saying, oh, here's something we can learn from, do better next time. So I think that I used to work a lot with a gentleman from Nord Pool, Hans Aud, who talks a lot about a very simple principle. If you want to trade power across your borders, start trading power across your borders. If you want to trade power multilaterally, just start doing it. Don't worry about if it's perfect or not. find a way to make it happen, and then just work with that and then step from there. And I think that this is something that could easily be done, not easily, could be done in the South Asian context as well.
Okay, thank you. I also would like to ask both of you, maybe starting with Mr. Matthew, you know, the way the pandemic has challenged the resilience and, you know, flexibility of the power system, do you foresee it as an opportunity to accelerate the cross-border electricity trade, particularly in South Asia and obviously in the global context as well? What's your take on that?
It's a really good question. You know, I should say we organized a roundtable as part of Singapore International Energy Week just a couple of weeks ago, and this question was raised in that session as well. And so I might repeat myself for some of my colleagues who spoke then, but the short answer is I think it is an opportunity, and I think it's an opportunity for a couple of reasons. One is that, you know, it really revealed to all of us the real importance of energy systems in all of our lives. Things we just can't take it for granted. The energy system did not go down as a result of COVID anywhere, and that's really important. And now we're facing, though, some real challenges with the recovery, right? So what we find ourselves right now is power systems under stress because of high fossil fuel prices, higher than expected increases in demand. I think a lot of folks have looked at what has happened and said, we need to go back to the fossil fuel days. We need to buy more coal and more gas. But I think, in fact, the opposite is true. I think, you know, what we need to do is really double down on investments in renewable energy and infrastructure for transmission. And the reason I say that is because if you look at what the International Energy Agency has been saying in terms of investment need, which was highlighted earlier, I think, we need to see a steady decline in investments in fossil fuels, not a zeroing out. We still need to invest in fossil fuel assets because we're still using it. But we need to decline investments and step up investments in renewable energy in order to meet a 1.5 degree target. And what we've seen in practice is the decline in investments in fossil fuels has been in line with a 1.5 degree target, but we're not seeing the increase in investments in renewable energy. And that's why we're seeing this energy crunch right now. But if we had more renewable energy in place, if we had more transmission lines and markets in place to trade that power across borders, we'd actually probably would be in a stronger position now than otherwise. So that would be my answer to that question.
Okay, Mr. Rajiv, please, your take on this.
Yeah, so you know, I'll just say that if pandemic has not taught us anything, then then it will be, you know, we all know that you know, there is an environmental cost to everything, you see, and you know, for quite some time we have been you know, doing wishy-washy with that particular thing. How do we price it, and etc. and so on and so forth. But I think now it has reached a stage where probably you can't ignore it, and that is how it is being reflected in this, you know, commitment that is being announced and so on and so forth. And you know, countries are making commitment just because they, you know, the slide I show, the kind of environmental impacts, the, you know, weather events that South Asia actually receives. No other region in the world even receives that kind of impacts. And if you just take the amount of cost that incurs because of the flood, cyclone, etc., the cost towards such renewable energy will be minuscule if you really you know, see in the holistic way. Because as a government, you really has to take care of all the cost. So for a country or for a, you know, society as a whole, you do pay for it. So why you won't be able to pay for that? After all, you pay through some other you know, mitigation measures or adoption measures, which are huge costly, has serious you know, impacts on that. That's point number one. Point number two, you know, very interestingly, I'll tell you, when during the pandemic we had this 9 p.m. 9-minute event, you see, where Prime Minister asked people to switch off their lights for 10 minutes, you know, in solidarity with the, you know, the worker who was you know, taking care of the patients and so on and so forth. So during that particular 10-minute period, you asked about the flexibility, so that's what I'm talking about. So we saw a demand reduction, something, if I remember, of the order of 34 gigawatts. And this announcement was just made just 1 or 2 days before, not that it was announced a long time before. The entire that megawatt, you know, downscaling and upscaling was managed very smoothly with the existing grid systems, with the existing capacities. And interestingly enough, we also got something around 400 megawatt of support from Bhutan, because Bhutan has hydropower, and you could really kickstart hydropower that quickly. So we know some of these things. Now the whole idea is that how do we put in a structure where it is done in a base price discovery manner. Otherwise, we know as a power system engineer, this is known to people. The whole question is that how do we do it in a manner that is cost efficient, that is economical, and also sustainable? That's the question, and that is how the flexibility question should be answered. Not just building large capacities of storage, but how do you actually really allocate those storage in a cost-effective and economical and sustainable manner? So that's the question. And in this context, of course, cross-border trade really has immense scope. If it can be tapped properly, it has immense scope. At least in South Asia, it's immense scope. At least we have contiguous borders, and except let's say Sri Lanka and Maldives. So those things can be tapped, and not just South Asia integrated with Southeast Asia and so on and so forth. So there is a larger picture to the whole this thing, and very fundamental question is, the bigger is the grid, better is the flexibility. I mean, this is normal electrical engineering text will tell you that larger is the grid, better for you to manage the grid, and you have the better resources available. So our pandemic just actually re-energize our thought to think in those directions. Probably maybe people have forgotten it right now, but at least during that time people really felt about it. So I mean, you see, there was not a power disruption. By the way, I'll tell you, there was no demand the curtailment on the cross-border lines. You see, I mean, Bhutan was, because Bhutan has contract of all surplus to be exported, so all surplus got exported. Whatever the reduction in the demand happened in other countries, it was appropriately managed. So you really didn't saw any let's say disruption in the grid as far as grid is concerned, so to speak. Yeah. I mean, that actually tells a point that you need to recognize the inherent flexibility that is available in the grid. See, one thing is that we want more flexible resources, but inside the grid you have a lot of flexible resources. If you coordinate properly between the regions, you can actually manage a lot of flexibility. That is also, and that's almost comes at almost at 3. Let's say you don't really cost much as such. So that also is a learning that you can manage if you coordinate properly among your regional constituents and so on and so forth.
Good. Perfect, thank you. So just to summarize the discussion, if I request both of you to, what would be your key takeaway message for our delegates, and in terms of, accelerating or realizing the multilateral cross-border electricity trade in South Asia, what should be the first point on the agenda? If I may request Mr. Matthew to maybe begin. Yeah.
Sure. No, I think if there's one thing that I recommend doing, it would be to set some deadlines and timelines. So I think it's great to see so much progress going on in South Asia. I think what's missing is the vision thing, to put it bluntly. What is it all going to look like in some future, and can we set some timelines for actually making it happen? If you look at Southeast Asia, they have the ASEAN Power Grid. One thing I didn't mention is they now have a multilateral trade between Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore is joining it next year. And the reason they ended up creating that was because in a document that was all agreed upon by the ASEAN member states, they said by 2018 we should have some kind of multilateral power trade. And then 2018 came up pretty quick, and they said, oh, we actually have to do something now. And they did it. Now, is it perfect? No. Is it something that could be improved on and built off of? Absolutely. And that's the point. By setting a deadline for themselves, by setting an ambition for themselves, they achieved that ambition and now can up the ambition next time. And I think it's really worth considering what the vision might look like for South Asia, and to set some time frame and say, what are we going to do in the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? What can we actually achieve? And then start working towards it. I would say that, and I mentioned institutions. I think building up institutions and focusing on capacity development, you can't go wrong there. More work should and could be done on that. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Rajiv, if you'd like to summarize as well.
I won't summarize because it will have so many things, but let me again focus on the multilateral part. Matthew mentioned one thing that if you want to do it, just do it, right? I mean, that's the case as far as, at least the not multilateral, let's say the trilateral, if I use the term trilateral, at least in Southeastern context. So we have this project, this GMR project for selling 500 megawatt to Bangladesh, and there has been some level of development. So I would say that why can't we think of this as a regional pride project? Just raise this status as a regional pride project or something like that, and just put some focused timeline on that, and just get it done. At least we have at least one project to say that okay, we have at least made some transition. And this goes back to the same thing what Matthew gave the example of LTMS. I mean, they also had similar endless discussion for years and years, and then they said, okay, let us just build small amount of 100 megawatt or 200 megawatt of power. Let's see how it happens. Just test it out, so to speak. At least similar thing can be done in South Asia, just to begin. It's not perfect, it's not the best. You can still have back-to-back kind of trilateral arrangement. It may not be that regional kind of thing, so to speak. So prioritize one of the trilateral project and build on it, and let some power flows on some of these lines, and you manage some of the issues of wheeling and etc. In a much more better way at a later stage. When you have regional kind of wheeling mechanism and so on and so forth. So I would say that prioritize, because there's nothing that you have to do in the sense that it's already there. It just needs to be done. And I mean, there's no point in saying that we need to have multilateral, because there are already some discussion has gone into certain extent. We just need to take it forward. So that will be my single, let's say, one. And of course, South Asia is beneficial in the sense that India has the power exchange, and so you can actually utilize the power exchange. I have not seen that kind of thing in ASEAN as such, even though it is slightly different because Singapore has the exchange, but Philippines has, it's kind of, let's say, isolated, let's say, geographically. Vietnam is coming up with some sort of powerful structure. Hopefully, probably that could be seen going in future. But at least South Asia, we have demonstrated that you can trade on power exchange, which is kind of a, let's say, if you do it really as an exchange format, it's kind of a multilateral trade. You see, you can actually buy and sell if you do exactly in the exchange way. So you intensify the product availability in the market, in Indian power market. So let's say you have GDAM, Green Day Ahead market. So that also people can, the Southeastern countries can utilize, because you can actually sell your green power, not just the normal power, because let's say Bhutan and Nepal could be green power and so on and so forth. So intensify the products in the market and make it available to regional participants to begin with. So that would be my, because the second one is relatively easy as compared to the first one, because it's already there, you can just open up a little bit.
Okay, thank you both of you for joining us today. Dear delegates, the floor is open. If any one of you would like to make any concluding comment or anything, or any feedback you'd like to give, the floor is open. Or otherwise, we can close out the discussion. Mr. Khabanda, would you like to add anything? I think you're. Yeah.
Thank you, Ahmed. Very small, brief remarks only. I think William told very well thing that we need to have some time frame. But how to fix a time frame? I think the regional institutions like SAARC, the institutions like ESCAPE, and the multilateral institutions like ADB and World Bank, they all need to unite, as well as the large countries. I think India, Pakistan, they also need to be coordinated and collaborative only, so that some already I think ESCAPE has drawn an action plan for implementation in Asia Pacific. I think for even now for South Asia, they can need to implement it, and they can draw some, I think, structure where they can create some association or forum of regional institutions, escape, multilateral ADB, World Bank, and large countries, so that you can take this agenda off with time frame, and so that we can implement few things in a fixed time frame only. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Dear delegates, our discussion today emphasized the importance of cross-border electricity trade. We also tried to, highlight some of the underlying challenges, and our experts tried to discuss some of the mitigation strategies. As pointed out by panelists, a holistic view is required, and each member state must strive to look beyond its borders while planning for least cost and clean energy sources. I hope that this workshop has given you food for thought regarding the challenges that lie ahead, and we must all play our roles in our capacity to make sure that our region is transitioning towards the greener future. As rightly said by the ADB Vice President for Knowledge Management and Sustainable Development, Mr. Bambang Susantono, that the battle against climate change will be won or lost in Asia and Pacific. So we'll need to make sure that we win this battle. Thank you for joining us. Take great care. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.